Good morning. I'm Diana McCabe, business editor at the San Diego Union-Tribune, and I'm here live from our downtown newsroom with biz reporter Phil Molnar. Also, who knows everything about Star Wars, comic books, Comic-Con, which leads us to our story today.
Yeah. So it's pretty big news for Comic-Con this year of what's actually not happening, and that's that Marvel Studios is staying away. That's the biggest, probably the biggest person staying away and the biggest franchise right now for Comic-Con. But also, HBO announced it isn't coming, and Game of Thrones isn't coming.
Game of Thrones, Westworld won't be here.
I don't think Westworld is as big of a deal, but definitely Game of Thrones, which has been here every year since it launched.
Yes.
So it's like a real staple. So.
And my personal favorite,
Outlander
from Starz will also be skipping San Diego Comic-Con in favor of New York Comic-Con.
Right.
What is with that? Like, all my favorite shows, nothing is going to be there this year. I mean, why should I go? Has Comic-Con lost its luster? What are people telling you?
Well, okay, so a lot of the official explanation out of Marvel and HBO is scheduling conflicts, or maybe they don't have enough of their ducks in the row to really wow fans this year. And that might be true, but some people have kind of, I think for people like you mentioned that I really like comic books, so I've gone my whole life to Motor City Comic Con. I lived in New York City when New York Comic Con. I've been to New York Comic Con a lot of times, and also Wizarding World in Chicago. And I just got to think that there's, at least starting out on the story, we had this premise, me and another reporter, Lori Weisberg, and we were trying to maybe show that, like, what is going on? Do these people, are they pulling away from Comic-Con? Is this not as cool as it used to be? Is it not worth it as much for studios? And even though my inner dork or nerd or whatever wants to believe that there's something wrong with Comic-Con, we just couldn't find that from any expert we talked to, any industry source, anything.
For example, I do know, like with Outlander, that fourth season kicks off in November, and New York Comic-Con is in October, so maybe it makes a little bit more sense to time their release during that time. Game of Thrones is still in production, so maybe they aren't ready. But still, I mean, you were saying like there are a lot of Comic-Cons, there are a lot of other events that people can go throughout the year. Is this just kind of an off year for San Diego Comic-Con?
I think it might be an off year, but at the same time, like, there's always surprises. And what's going to happen this year is, what we know of so far is DC Comics, the Warner Brothers division of DC Entertainment, with their crop of films coming out, including Aquaman, Wonder Woman 1984, and Shazam. It's starting to look like they're going to be the main Hall H, attraction this year. So, like, where there's vacuum might leave a little bit. Marvel's not there. Star Wars had a big splash in 2015, but it hasn't been back since. I mean, this might be DC Films' time to shine. And
that's what you were saying. Like, Marvel usually steals that light, but now it could be DC's show. And we could see now that, personally, Aquaman doesn't do much for me, but I'm sure Aquaman has legions of fans. But also Wonder Woman would be huge, right? Especially if your favorite actress, like,
well,
appearance.
Gal Gadot would be there. But one kind of interesting thing about Aquaman, I'm not a huge Aquaman fan either, but one of the things that came out of the Justice League movie, which was kind of seen as like a box office screw up, or like didn't get a lot of critical accolades, but one of the things that came out of that movie, Justice League, was a lot of people that really enjoyed the banter between Aquaman and Flash. They were kind of seen as some of the best characters in the movie. So, I mean, I think there is some good buzz going into the Aquaman movie, actually. So it might, and I really think if DC is able to really capitalize on that and do a great show for the fans, it could be a big year for them.
And, we still don't have the entire lineup for the show. It comes out, I mean, I know you'll be blogging about that later, well, probably pretty soon. As things are released, shows come out, guests are announced. So we still don't have the complete lineup, and, So who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. And I mean, even though these big studios aren't there, for maybe the film or Star Wars or whatnot, the interesting thing is like they're still going to be from the TV crop. So if you're a fan of superhero shows, like you're going to have like all the DC shows that are on CW, like the Flash and the Arrow, and probably Supergirl. I don't think Supergirl's been announced. But
Is Riverdale going to be there?
Riverdale's going to be there.
Riverdale will be there.
Riverdale's going to be there. That's Archie Comics, but you know, whatever. And then for Marvel, we probably expect to see a lot of their Netflix shows, such as Punisher or Luke Cage. You know, those haven't really been announced yet, but I think 2 years ago I went to the Luke Cage panel, and you're like, okay, I'm not that excited about the Luke Cage show, but I'll go, whatever. And out of nowhere, the star of the Punisher series, John Berthenol, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, he just showed up at the panel.
Oh.
And it was this huge shot, and then they announced the Punisher series. So it's kind of like, you might, on paper, we might be looking at this year's Comic-Con like, oh, I guess just DC, no Marvel, blah, blah, blah. But it's so crazy how you could be at like a really goofy panel for like a Disney movie like no one really wants to see, and then they'll all of a sudden like announce that they're working on a sequel for some movie, and everybody freaks out.
They'll have like, you know, a big announcement. I think that was in your story too. Like, didn't George Clooney come?
Yeah, George Clooney did that at
came.
New York Comic Con. He surprised. I think there was one year. There was a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who I love, but there was a movie I never saw called the Race to Witch Mountain.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
And so they had that, and then out of nowhere they're like, "Hey, everybody at this panel, we're making a sequel to Tron." So that year, everybody was freaking out. Like, that movie didn't end up doing like as well as maybe critics would have wanted, Tron Legacy, but at the time, people were freaking out. And another one that got cut from, we ended up not putting it in the story because it was a little crazy, but Legendary Pictures, which produces a lot of these bigger pictures that we've seen, it actually snuck into some other movie. I can't even remember any of her coming out, but anyways, at that panel they debuted footage for the new Godzilla movie coming out.
Okay.
Which,
So we should be prepared for, even though like some of our favorite shows aren't there, be prepared for some surprises, surprise announcements, surprise guests. And again, you're going to be blogging about what we do know that'll be coming up to Comic-Con, which is just a few weeks away, on our website.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. Every year what I do is when the schedule comes out, I go through it all and kind of pick out the best things, like maybe for our readers or for a general audience that they'd like to see. Obviously, there's always like small things. Like I remember last year on accident, sort of on accident, I wanted to get to another panel early, but I ended up being at a book thing for authors that write Assassin's Creed books.
Yeah.
And it seems kind of goofy. It's like a video game, and these people are writing novels of it.
Yeah.
Like, who would want to read that, right? But it's packed. So, you know, it's like, even if, I mean, I've never waited in line for Hall H. I've never been in there. But it's like, you know, it's like, it's kind of interesting because there's all these little panels along the way. Like, even, I think Snoopy's having a big thing where they announce, like, it's, not Snoopy, Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown and Snoopy, yeah.
Close.
Yeah. They're going to do something where it's like their 50th anniversary of their connection to the NASA space program.
Oh my goodness.
So, I mean, there's somebody out there that's going to be like, that's what I got to be at, you know?
And that's what the great thing about Comic-Con is. So when you and Lori finished all your reporting, you did not feel that Comic-Con was slipping in terms of its prestige. That's what people were telling you. I know you guys talked to New York Comic-Con, you talked to people who study it, you talked to some of the entertainment, the trade magazines, and they just said, this is how it goes. Some years they're here, some years they're not.
I know. I almost wanted to prove it because last year I had gone to D23, which is basically Disney's version of Comic-Con. And it was such a fantastic experience. As just a person enjoying the convention and not a reporter, oh my God, D23 was like so much of a better experience. It was like you ended up in a hall that was way bigger than Hall H, and they're like, here's all these movies coming out. Here's the cast of Star Wars. Here's the cast of Avengers. Here's the cast. And they came out one after one, and it was so well done. And then on the convention floor, it was like you had a little more space to walk around. There wasn't as many people, and it was just like, in my mind, I'm like, well, why in tarnation would Disney or Star Wars. Star Wars has its own convention every year. Why would they fight and kick and do everything to get into this behemoth of San Diego Comic-Con? And why don't they just do their own thing? D23, Star Wars Celebration every year in different cities. And that was sort of my thesis. But you know what? The problem with that, it ended up not being true. And,
then I think there were some figures in that story. I forget which studio Lori talked to.
Warner Brothers Television.
That talked about like the reach that they got from San Diego Comic-Con, because I thought the same thing too. I was sort of making it akin to like CES, which is a big tech show, and like Apple and Microsoft, they all used to go to that, and then they all started doing their own shows. And I thought, well, maybe that's what San Diego Comic-Con is going to be like. You're going to have all these different cons and different shows. But I think the studios, it did show that when you had all those people together, it did help increase the reach. So it sounded like the numbers, the data shows that it's still a really good venue for these studios to come out
all that social media advertising, the money they get from that, like the earned media and all the other ways to track that kind of thing are amazing. What you can get out of Comic-Con. Although that did come to another part of the article where you want that means that any bad buzz coming out makes it even worse. But I don't know, these are generally pretty excited people, so you could just be like, here's a look at this costume, and people might freak out and be like, that's awesome. Like I know last year I was at a panel for the show Young Justice, and it was producing a season 3, which is a cartoon that got canceled back in the day, and it's fantastic if you ever get the chance to view it. And they just debuted like what the new characters, what their drawings for what their costumes would look like. No footage, at least I don't remember any footage. I can't remember, but anyways, the big deal was the costumes. People are freaking out just about these
fans
costumes.
Just want to see
so if you're anything. A fan, these studios, I know they get nervous, but it's kind of weird how like you could basically be like, here's a prop, and they'd be like, oh my god, you just you feel the excitement of the crowd and stuff. So.
Well, I think the story is still up online right now, so check that out at our website, san diego union-tribune.com, and also check back for Phil. You can follow him on Twitter at
Philip Molnar.
But also just keep an eye out for his blog posts about what's coming up at Comic-Con, and who knows, maybe you will get Wonder Woman showing up.